Welcome to our sharing on the second half of St. John's Gospel. And we have come into chapter 18, and I want to do some preparation for the events that are coming so that we will understand the drama that John actually presents to us. I've already told you that we have the world power representing Pilate, and we have the religious power representing Caiaphas and the Sanhedrin, and they're going to go into battle with each other. Both of them represent the cosmos, or the unbelieving world. Both of them are under the influence of the prince of this world in this event. And in between them stands Jesus as an innocent victim, a holy Lamb of God. And he is going to pay the price for their hatred, for their manipulation of each other, and for their destruction of each other, as well as everybody else. He's right in there in the center. So both groups are the most perfect instruments that Satan could possibly choose to cause Jesus maximum pain and maximum suffering. In fact, Jesus is going to experience hell on earth. So John approaches the Passion narrative in his own unique way, dealing with the main events that are in the synoptics. He leaves some things out. You're expecting me to say that by now, because he chooses certain things to bring out the spiritual and theological and deeper meanings of the events that we're actually looking at. So as we go through the events of the Passion and death of Jesus, we are actually going to get a revision of the gospel given back to us, very particularly the final discourse that Jesus has actually just finished. We're going to see this coming into action when we get into these events. And so it's the gospel as a whole that we need to look at, because John has this way of writing that he presents all the foundations at the beginning. He builds up the text, and then he completes the entire revelation that he's giving in the final events. He does exactly the same thing in the book of Revelation. And so it is in the events of the passion and death and resurrection of Jesus that we are all going to finally recognize who Jesus really is. So John wants us to read the events of the passion from several different angles so that the shock effect will really come to us, and that we will understand that if we don't read them from the above level, we don't get what's going on at all. If we join the protagonists at the lower level, we're not going to understand. We will come to it with unseeing eyes. So I want to show you something that John does that the Synoptic Gospels don't do at all. And that is, he uses very dramatic stage effects to get a message across. For example, when Jesus will be on trial before the Sanhedrin, he's going to give us a two-stage effect to bring out the importance of what's actually going on. For example, he's going to have Peter front stage, surrounded by the servants and various people who are present in the house of Caiaphas. And he's going to have Jesus backstage with the chief priests and the people who are interrogating him. So just at the point where Jesus is being interrogated about his disciples and about his teaching, you have Peter in the foreground actually denying him, cursing and swearing he never knew him. It's when you see that context that it hits you in a way it couldn't possibly hit you in the Synoptic Gospels, where you're simply told one thing after another. Also, when you come to the trial with Pilate, John has a three-stage effect, which is really very powerful. This would come across marvelously if it was demonstrated on a stage. In the front of the stage, you have Pilate and the chief priests and eventually the crowds. Everything is noisy, it's raucous, it's chaotic, it's frenzied, and it's terrible. And then Pilate goes backstage, where he and Jesus meet privately, personally, and all is silent and quiet. When Pilate goes back into Jesus' presence, he begins to see a little and to understand a little. But when he comes out to the front stage and meets the unbelieving world and the cosmos in all its terribleness, Pilate gets totally confused. And then we have a middle stage in which you see Jesus being tormented and scourged and crowned with thorns by the Roman soldiers. And what John is actually showing you is that while Jesus is silent, backstage and middle stage, we can see clearly that it's Pilate's going from one to the other that causes the center one. That Jesus would never have been scourged and crowned with thorns if Pilate wasn't so confused going from one to the other. Now that illustrates something that was emphasized in the final discourse of Jesus. And that is that the disciples were going to have to take their mission out into that raucous, chaotic world. And if they were going to go back and forth, they would get confused as well. So they have to be living in this community of love and unity in order to maintain their balance and to be able to see things as God sees them. John emphasizes Jesus' silence throughout the whole event. So much so that when we actually come to the cross, John has silence over the whole place, which I will explain more when we come to it. And what John is saying to you and me in this silence, one of the things he is saying, I just want to bring it out now, is that the only way you and I will ever understand this is by contemplating it in the silence of our hearts. We won't get it any other way. It doesn't matter who gives you lectures on this or explains the details or anything else. That's not it. It's by actually contemplating Jesus in this extraordinary mystery that the mystery comes to us. John alone among the four Gospels gives you a very particular twist to the whole story. And if you're not really alerted to this, you might miss it. And the twist is that while Pilate seems to be the judge, and he tells Jesus, I've got power to kill you, or I've got power to set you free. Now, when Pilate was actually saying those words, he had no power at all because the Jewish Sanhedrin was taking it from him. But while he was saying it, Jesus actually judged Pilate and judged the Sanhedrin and judged everybody. He said, no, you're not the most guilty among here. And so John is getting you to look at the fact that things are not what they seem. And that if you begin to look at it from the deeper levels, that you're utterly amazed as to what's going on. Utterly amazed. When Pilate eventually brings the tortured Jesus out to the people and says, Ecce homo. I'll go deeper into that when we get there. He would have been utterly terrified if he knew who it was that he had scourged. He wouldn't have been able for the revelation at all. He had no idea about the mystery of the Son of Man. He had no idea that he had just scourged the beloved Son of the Father. All of this is completely unknown to him. His ignorance is unbelievable. When you come to Caiaphas, you're dealing with a very unworthy holder of the highest office in the Jewish religion. He was the high priest. And when you realize that he, as the high priest, is in the highest position of authority between God and God's people, then you begin to have some idea of the enormity of this man condemning the true high priest of the new religion. one high priest condemning another one. So there are things like that we will watch out for. As we go through all of the events of the Passion, John is going to proclaim to us that we are dealing with the true Messianic King of the Jews, that we are dealing with the true high priest of the new covenant, that we are dealing with the true and only Lamb of God who can take away the sins of the world, that this is the final Passover, this is the definitive Passover, this is the Passover that makes all the other Passovers have grace and meaning. And John is also going to show us, and he's going to get us to try and register, that if you look at this from the outside only, that it will appear as if darkness has won the battle. It will appear as if darkness has actually extinguished the light. It will appear as if this is Satan's hour. But John is going to make it very clear to us that that is not the reality. That is not the reality at all. This is Jesus' hour, and he has told us this in chapter 2, chapter 7, chapter 8, chapter 12, and chapter 13. This is Jesus' hour. It's his time. It's his Passover. So we are alerted to the fact that we must not take things on a superficial level. Things are not what they seem. Not at all. So if we have journeyed together safely through all the chapters of John's Gospel up to now, we are actually ready for Jesus to reveal himself. And he's going to reveal himself in a way that we don't expect. Because the way the world does things is you have a big drama put on a stage, you've got lights, you've got music, you've got sound, you've got people making a big fuss. That's not it. We're going to see Jesus as a true hero in these events. So we're also going to see that each one of the events fulfills the scriptures. Not only does the Gospel of John come completely alive in chapters 18, 19, and 20, but all of the scriptures do. It's really fascinating. One of the things that John is going to bring out immediately as we go into chapter 18 is that nobody can even touch the Son of Man unless he surrenders. Now, we got an inkling of that back in Luke's Gospel when the people of Nazareth tried to throw Jesus over a hill to kill him, and he just simply walked away. They couldn't do it. They didn't have the power because that was not his time. It was not the way to go. And it was not them. Nothing was right about it, so he just simply walked away. I wonder what the people of Nazareth thought about their victim simply walking through them and going away. They had to realize who he was. So until he actually surrenders into the hands of sinners, nobody can touch him. And John has already eloquently revealed to us that he will do this, but he will do it out of obedience to the Father and out of love for the human race. Now, why will he do it out of obedience to the Father? Because the Father and Jesus are one. They have the one will, they have the one love. And so it is God who wants to redeem his children, and he will pay a hell of a terrible price for children who are not even grateful, don't even care, who will not say thanks. It is really, really something amazing. So let's look at the text in John chapter 18. After he had said all of this, that is the final discourse, Jesus left with his disciples, that is the 11 faithful ones, and crossed the Kedron Valley. The Kedron Valley means the Blackwater Valley. There was a garden there, which John doesn't name, but we know it's the Garden of Gethsemane. And it's called the Garden of Gethsemane because there was an instrument in it called the Gethsemane for crushing the olives and Lazarus, who owned the property, allowed the poor to come in and use this instrument free of charge. There was a garden there, and he went into it with his disciples. Judas the traitor knew it well, of course, because Jesus revealed to some of the mystics that it wasn't just on the Thursday night of what we call Holy Week that he prayed in the Garden of Gethsemane. He had prayed there every night, and that Judas knew that he was praying there every night. Judas knew exactly where to go. Judas knew the place well, since Jesus had often met with his disciples there. So not only during this particular week did Jesus prepare himself in prayer for this final trial of his life, but when they came to Jerusalem for the great feasts, Lazarus would allow them to use this garden. Jesus preferred to pray at night because the world would be gone silent, and the noise and the hassle and the shouting of the people would all have died down. And so he could be alone with the Father in the silence of the night. So it was his choice to pray at night. So Jesus had often prayed there with his disciples. And Judas came and he brought a cohort to this place, together with a detachment of guards sent by the chief priests and the Pharisees. So Judas arrives with a cohort of Roman soldiers. That means that the Roman authorities and the Jewish authorities operate together in this event. This is amazing. We're going to see them absolutely at loggerheads with each other as we go on. But at the beginning of this event, they're actually together. They operate together. I'll read it first just with a gentle comment, and then I'll go deeper into it. Notice there is a detachment of guards sent by the chief priests as well. These were the temple police, and they were a private police force which the Roman authorities allowed the Sanhedrin to have because the temple was so great, and the numbers of people coming to the temple to pray, particularly at feast times, actually required a temple police to see to everything running smoothly. So both groups came together. And John says something very, very interesting. He says, they came to this place all with lanterns and torches and weapons. Now, Jesus is going to ask them, who are you looking for? They are coming armed, and they're coming with torches and weapons to find a lamb, to find a beloved son, to find the gentlest person on the planet. They're coming, they absolutely have no idea who they are looking for. And so the first question Jesus is going to ask is, who are you looking for? So it is at this point that the Synoptic Gospels actually give you the agony of Jesus in the garden. John leaves out that completely. He obviously considers that it has been dealt with sufficiently by the Synoptic Gospels. And so he goes on to something else. He wants to show Jesus' surrender. Judas, as I said already, has the job of actually identifying Jesus in the dark, which only somebody who knew him very well could find him. So they come, the Romans and the Jews together, the two protagonists, and they want to arrest the Lamb of God. They're coming with lanterns to arrest the light of the world. And they're coming to arrest a beloved son who will only want to do what the Father wants anyway. So here you have the blindness, the darkness, the ignorance of the cosmos. They do not see what they're looking at. They do not understand anything. So this is vintage John that we're going to be dealing with, because John wants you at this particular stage to recognize, without anybody telling you, that if you go looking for light with a lantern, there's something radically wrong. And Jesus is the light of the world. And the little lantern, of course, only shows you a tiny bit where to put your next step in the darkness of the night. So again, we go back to John chapter 1, verse 5. They are coming with their little lanterns to extinguish the light of the world. They think they can do it. Okay. Now, this is the night that Jesus warned us about in chapter 9, chapter 11, and chapter 12. A night where the prince of this world is going to take over. And Jesus said, if people are walking in the dark, they will stumble. Now, he means that physically, but John is giving it to us not just as a physical thing, but to tell us that you will stumble spiritually. You will fall spiritually. And these men fall, okay? They stumble in this darkness because, as Jesus said back there in those chapters, they have no light to guide them. And so we enter into this great mystery, and you see already that the darkness cannot comprehend the light. The darkness can't even see the light. The unbelieving cosmos only sees a human being there. They don't even recognize him in the ordinary sense. They need somebody else to point him out. But you see that the unbelieving world are prepared to kill, even if they don't know who they're killing, or even why they're doing it. And so we will continue with this great, deep, and wonderful mystery in the following episodes. Thank you for listening. Slán agus banach dé live. Goodbye. God bless you.
My life is a miracle. Every child has a story of God's love to share. Shalom world, tune into God's love story.